Good afternoon, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for Thursday, the 30th of August, 2018. Things are starting to get busier in the Atlantic, way out here, lo and behold, in the main development region. How about that? All that talk about the cooler than average sea surface temperatures for June and July, and things warmed up through August, especially the latter half, and now we have this system, and it's going to become the next tropical depression. As such, the threat to the southern part of the islands, formerly referred to as the Cape Verde Islands, now officially called the Cabo Verde Islands, tropical storm watch, I guess that is. Let me make sure I got my, oh, sorry, that's a warning. Blue is a warning. I should have known. Yellow is a watch. So for the southern part there, as this develops real close to coming off the Guinea highlands and into the far eastern Atlantic, and then it should move off to the west-northwest with time, as ridging to its north up here, not very robust. We don't have this very stout east-west oriented deep layer ridging to steer this westward towards the islands. That is not going to happen, and I am 100% sure of that. How many times can you say that in the weather world? In terms of it absolutely turning and eventually heading out to sea, or more out to sea is more accurate, pretty high chance that that happens, but sometimes these systems will come off and then they stair-step their way more and more west over time, and they could end up over here towards the southwest Atlantic, and you just never know. So we'll keep an eye on it because it's there. The name will be Florence. It is forecast to become a hurricane, and from the looks of the modeling, it wouldn't surprise me if this becomes a major hurricane, a Category 3 or higher. So we'll take a look at it on satellite in just a moment. In the Pacific, we do have Miriam and Norman, and here's the track for Norman. We'll keep an eye on this for any potential impact for Hawaii. Right now, that looks to be minimal, but as I learned with Lane, kind of dismissing it early on, things can change, and that's an example, too, that we need to make sure we follow in the Atlantic, even though future Florence looks like a shoe-in to stay out at sea. That's sometimes subject to change. It's rare, but as we saw with Lane, even though it never made landfall in Hawaii, it did bring impacts to Hawaii, obviously, and there was that threat there for a few days of historic impacts. Luckily, it didn't come to pass. All right, looking at the satellite picture, and by the way, Miriam is a non-issue. Don't even have to worry about it. A marked increase in the overall convection across the Atlantic basin, a very unstable atmosphere setting up. This is the tropical wave that we've been tracking. Upper level winds are still a little bit too strong coming across this way out in the western part of the main development region, but up here, almost into the subtropics, you're seeing a much more favorable atmosphere. Definitely some instability and a more bubbling up of the atmosphere, showing that, I mean, put it this way, the dry air issues, those are pretty much gone, for a good deal of the area. Now, it's pretty prevalent here, which you can see, but not there, and that's where this next system is going to develop. It is developing now, and will almost certainly become the next hurricane in the Atlantic basin, and things are going to start getting busier and busier from here. As far as this system goes, we definitely want to watch this very closely and see how this evolves over time. I want to pull up a video for you real quick. This is from a good friend of mine. Hold on. A good friend of mine that I have come to know over the internet, and that's a really neat thing these days, where you can get to know people and you feel like that you've known them forever, and they become friends. And this is from Carlos, and he contributed some video from Maria in the San Juan area on my documentary from last year. And before I show this, let me get back here. So lots and lots of convection, showers and thunderstorms through the U.S., British Virgin Islands and vicinity, and Puerto Rico, which is right there in the center. And so Carlos sent me this video not long ago. I want to show you what this looks like. Whoa. And sounds like. Lightning. Whoa. Thunder. Remember this shot from the Maria chapter? Yeah. So this is what it looks like in Puerto Rico just a little while ago from Carlos. I really appreciate you sending me this, buddy. Next best thing to be in there. This is that tropical wave moving through the region, bringing some pretty heavy rainfall on the order of several inches. And fresh water is good. They need the fresh water there, obviously, for drinking water. But too much of it at one time, well, obviously that can have some negative consequences. But you see, it's already creating some impact here. That's my main point. And this energy, some of it's going to split and maybe head more towards the west, some of it maybe towards Florida. And we do need to see if this tries to develop into a tropical cyclone at some point. The Europeans still very consistent in showing that evolution. The GFS trying to maybe take some energy later on and go across the Gulf towards Texas, but that's been on again, off again, so there's not any consistency or a consensus among multiple models or the ensembles. You know, looking at just one run, a deterministic run, and not looking at the overall big picture, you know, it's like asking one person their opinion about something. They could be very biased, they could have a staunch position on it, and when you get a consensus of a larger group of people, the larger the sample rate, the better. Then you develop a much more intelligent decision-making process, whether it's politics or, you know, something going on with math and science, pretty much anything. And the same holds true in meteorology, that one solution versus an ensemble group of solutions to get an average or hopefully a consensus at some point is always going to be better. And so far, there's still not a solid consensus just yet about genesis of something through here. You know, the birth of a tropical cyclone, we call it tropical cyclogenesis. But the Europeans been pretty consistent, and many of its ensemble members are indicating maybe something tries to develop in this area over the next several days. So we'll really watch this energy closely that's festering more and more. Festering, probably not a meteorological term, but it's definitely trying to get its act together. And as I showed you from the video there sent from Carlos, it's raining pretty solidly there in Puerto Rico and vicinity. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, just wanted to show you Norman went under rapid intensification mode last night for several hours into this morning. Maybe it has peaked, and then it'll just keep moving kind of south of west and then more to the west, northwest, and northwest with time. And again, folks, luckily the Baja Peninsula, all the way through the the big resort areas of mainland Pacific Mexico, nice and clear so far. And I'm worried though, as always, it doesn't matter what the season is. Once you get into September, you get development down here. The systems come up and then they turn towards the Baja because of lowering heights up here over North America. Not happening yet, but just don't let your guard down. Speaking of not letting your guard down, all right, so Ben Knoll, I have referred to this gentleman a lot, and he tweeted again something very interesting and potentially eye-opening, as he says here, the pressure anomaly pattern over the Atlantic for the next 4 weeks. That's, come on, that's almost a month, is a bit eye-opening, as he says, from the Japanese, the JMA Weekly. And he says weeks 1 and 2 blossoming in the main development region, maybe a Gulf of Mexico risk. Weeks 3 and 4 Gulf risk continues, the MDR, maybe the East Coast. So you have positive pressure anomalies to start, and then it evolves through time. I mean, follow this guy. It's right there, Ben Knoll Weather, and you can see this for yourself. Scrolling down though, looking at the Precip Anomaly. And this is a lot easier to sort of visualize. The darker the green, brown is dry and green is wetter. So you got this one streak in here. You can see what the pattern is showing overall as time evolves. So the JMA is picking up on it. The European, of course, the the Southeast Pacific, maybe for the Southwest U.S., impacts there over the next 4 weeks. Look at that one that curved right on up through here towards the end of that run. Interesting. Yeah, there you go. It's a little west of it. But this is showing us, folks, that the pattern is shifting And Ben was talking about this several weeks ago, that the European EPS ensemble prediction system indicating a change in the pattern over the Atlantic with more rising motion, and it's coming to fruition. It's pretty remarkable that we can see these things coming that far in advance. And then this tweet caught my eye from Eric Webb, that you've got this strong, persistent ridging over the northwest part of North America. I'm sorry, the northwest part of the basin. I just get too ahead of myself sometimes. This anomalous pattern of higher than normal pressures over North America, the northeast part, I mean, this is what we see. Joe Bastardi has talked about this for a number of years. He calls it the ridge over troubled waters. He has his analogies and other things. I have mine. And this is something that forecasters can see as a pattern that sets up. This is not just random. Hurricanes go randomly wherever they go. They are part of overall background patterns. And as Eric says, with this type of setup, in the middle of September, it usually spells trouble for land masses off to the west if the tropical Atlantic isn't half asleep. And as indicated from those graphics from Ben Knoll, it looks like the tropical Atlantic will be quite a bit more on the side of being awake rather than half asleep. So, here we go. This is sort of the fourth quarter, if you will, maybe the end of the third quarter of the game. I hate using that terminology, though. It kind of gives it less importance than it deserves. So, don't take too much into that. I'm just trying to, again, help people wrap their brain around. They've heard all season long, cold Atlantic, lower overall numbers, a down season, great news of this, great news of that. And that is positive. It's good to point that out. But then people start to turn away. We get busy, especially people that don't follow this stuff much at all unless there's a threat, and they just dismiss it. I just want to make sure you realize, in life there are things that are similar to other things, and you have seen plenty of times where, we're coming up to the end of the game and it looks like things could be changing for the team that's been down. And in this case, the Atlantic has been down, and it's looking to make a comeback. And I will temper that with saying it doesn't have to make a comeback. It's just looking like we're heading in that direction, okay? So make sure you stay aware. Nothing to panic about yet, of course, and nothing, at least right now, like we saw last year. A very different season on a lot of levels than we saw in 2017. But that doesn't mean we are out of the woods, okay? So things have become more favorable. Now it's time to pay attention, more so than any other time so far this season. All right, that is it for me for today. I appreciate you tuning in as always. I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. I'll be back with more for you tomorrow.